MSI's GF63 is one of the cheapest RTX 4050 gaming laptops for $1,000 US, so let's find out if it's worth it. The design and build quality seems the same as last year's model, with an all-black brushed aluminum finish on both the lid and interior. Don't let the metal fool you. It feels like a cheap laptop with more flex than usual, and it's super easy for fingerprints to show up. The brushed finish made it a little harder to clean too, so it always looked a bit messy. The hinge doesn't feel amazing, but it seemed better than my older model. It was also easier to open up. It's still a bit back heavy, but it didn't tip back like last year's version. The configuration I bought has an Intel i5 12450H processor, NVIDIA RTX 4050 graphics, 16 gigs of DDR4 dual-channel memory with a 15.6-inch 144Hz screen. The RTX 4050 graphics can run anywhere between 35 and 115 watts, quite a big range. But the GF63 is on the lower end of this range at just 45 watts, so it won't perform as well as a more expensive 4050 laptop with higher power limit. The laptop alone almost weighs 4.1 pounds or 1.85 kilos, increasing to 5.1 pounds or 2.3 kilos with the small 120 watt charger included. It's fairly lightweight compared to a lot of other 15-inch gaming laptops, an advantage in part due to the lower wattage graphics, as it means we don't need a huge power brick. Less power also means it doesn't have to be as large to fit a giant cooler. It's quite portable. There's a 720p camera above the screen in the middle, but no IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock. Here's how the camera and microphones look and sound, and this is what it sounds like while typing on the keyboard. The keyboard only has red backlighting, but all keys and secondary functions get lit up. You can change between 3 brightness levels by holding function and pressing the page up and down keys on the right, but the keys are still red even with the lighting off. The key presses feel flat and not clicky at all. I probably wouldn't want to use it for long typing sessions, but it's not too bad. The plastic touchpad felt fine, but felt a little small compared to modern laptops. The left side has the power input near the middle and a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-A port. Most of the ports are on the right, including separate 3.5mm headphone and mic jacks, 2 more USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-A ports, a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-C port, Gigabit Ethernet, and Kensington lock. The Ethernet port wasn't facing the preferred way, and it looks low, but I was able to remove a cable without lifting the laptop. The back just has the HDMI port in the middle. MSI's spec sheet says it can do 4K 30Hz, which implies HDMI 1.4, and we confirmed it could run a 4K screen at 60Hz 8-bit, which is possible with 1.4. The HDMI port does not support G-Sync, as, like last year, it connects to the Intel integrated graphics and not NVIDIA. However, this year's version has added DisplayPort support over USB Type-C, which can be used to bypass Optimus as it connects directly to the RTX 4050 graphics. The Type-C port cannot be used to charge the laptop though. Having most of the ports on the right also seems a bit weird, considering most people are right-handed mouse users, so cables are going to get in the way of your mouse hand. But I suppose if you're just connecting a mouse over USB Type-A, you could connect it to the left and not have anything in the way, because the power is on this side. But once you need Ethernet or any other cables plugged in, then it might be a problem. Getting inside requires unscrewing 12 Phillips head screws, all the same length. It's difficult to open, mostly because of the plastic on the right digging in around the headphone and mic jacks. You'll definitely want some pry tools for this. The ones I use are linked below the video. Inside we've got the battery down the front, a 2.5-inch SATA drive bay for an SSD, or hard drive if you like pain, 2 DDR4 memory slots near the middle, 1 PCIe Gen 4 M.2 SSD, and the Wi-Fi 6 card up the top corner. The Wi-Fi speed was decent compared to more expensive laptops, scoring similar to the older GF63, which used the same model of Wi-Fi card. The 512GB SSD was about a gigabyte per second faster in sequential write speed compared to last year's model, a welcome improvement. There's also room to upgrade to a larger double-sided drive. You'll just have to remove the included pads. It It came with 2 memory sticks installed for dual channel, a welcome improvement compared to the RTX 3050 and GTX 1650 models I bought last year that only had 1 stick, as 1 stick of DDR4 reduces performance. I took off half a point from the upgradability score because of how annoying it was to open, so the same amount of upgrade options compared to last year's model. The speakers are found underneath towards the front on the left and right sides. They get the job done, but they sound a bit muffled and not that good, especially at higher volume. The latency mon results weren't great, but there is a known NVIDIA bug at the moment that may increase this. The GF63 is powered by a 3-cell 51 Wh battery. The MSI Center software has Display Power Saver enabled by default, which automatically lowers the screen's refresh rate down to 60 Hz when you unplug the charger to save power. This is why the screen flashes black, and it goes back to 144 Hz when you plug back in. The battery lasted 10% longer compared to last year's GF63 with older CPU and GPU in the YouTube video playback test. It also lasted at least 38% longer in the game test, which makes sense as I test with a 30 FPS limit, and the RTX 4050 is more power efficient. Let's check out thermals next. There's only 1 fan, just like last year, but the bottom heat pipe now extends over both the CPU and GPU. Last year it stopped short and did not cover both. The intake holes on the bottom panel aren't above the fan, but over the CPU and GPU, which would bring air in over these. Air gets exhausted out of the left side only, and from one corner out the back, where the single fan is. The MSI Center software allows us to change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are silent, balanced, and extreme performance. Extreme performance gives us the option to overclock the GPU, but there's no overclock applied by default, and we have not changed that. You can also enable Cooler Boost, which sets the fan to full speed, or customize it a bit in advanced mode. The internal temperatures were cool when just sitting there idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. Extreme mode was fairly cool, so no problems with there just being 1 fan. Setting the fan to max speed lowered temps a bit more, but it's louder. And if we instead use a cooling pad, the one I test with is linked below the video, well, it's slightly better than maxing the fan while being quieter. It's about the same with or without the lid closed, so no problems docking it. The higher fan speeds or cooling pad were able to give us slightly higher clock speeds compared to auto fan or closing the lid, but I'm not too sure why, as the temperatures were relatively cool, and the power levels being reached were the same in balanced and extreme mode. The GPU maxes out at 45 watts, which is 5 watts higher compared to MSI's older GF63 with RTX 3050 graphics, though the CPU power was slightly lower as it was closer to 25 watts before, so that seems to be the trade-off. There's not really that much of a performance difference between the different modes when running an actual game. Although balanced and extreme modes were running with the same CPU and GPU power levels in the stress tests, extreme mode was 5% faster than balanced here. The CPU only gets to boost a little higher when the GPU isn't active, like in Cinebench. It started out at 60 watts in extreme mode, but lowered to 50 watts after just a second or two, at which point it started thermal throttling at 50 watts, dipping down to 45 over time. Balanced mode was thermal throttling too, but it was running fairly quiet to be fair. This is the first i5 12450H that we've tested, and although it's similar to a 10th gen 8-core 16-thread CPU from a couple generations prior, the single-core performance is much improved compared to any laptop that's near it in multi-core. We're looking at a 10% boost to multi-core compared to the older GF63, and a 12% boost in single-core. Performance lowers if we unplug the charger and instead run purely off of battery power. The older GF63 was now slightly ahead in multi-core performance, and although the newer version was still ahead in single-core, the gap is smaller now. Most laptops I test are in the low 30°C range on the keyboard at idle, and the GF63 was right in line with this. It's warmer with the stress test running, but the keyboard didn't feel hot. It's similar in the higher balanced mode, only the back section above the keyboard on the left feels hot, but you don't need to touch there. Extreme mode was cooler because the fan gets louder despite the CPU and GPU running at the same power levels as balanced mode. mode. It's slightly cooler with the fan maxed out, but it's louder now too. Let's have a listen. The fan was off and completely silent some of the time at idle, but it randomly turned on for 10 seconds every minute or so. It gets louder in the higher performance modes, and still gets fairly loud at maximum despite it not having two fans. But we can lower the fan noise a bit, as well as the temperatures with a cooling pad. The screen was one of the weakest points of the previous GF6 III, which makes sense, as that's typically one of the first places that a company is gonna cut costs on when making a cheaper laptop. So 2 years later, surely the screen in the newer 2023 model is better, right? The GF6 III still uses a 1080p 144Hz screen like before, but the color gamut is actually worse now. The old panel reached 61% sRGB, which still wasn't amazing, but I didn't expect it to get worse. The maximum brightness was about the same though, but anything under 300 nits is just too dim in my opinion. It's not too bad if you're inside in a darker room, but this is definitely one of the bigger compromises of the GF6 III. Screen response time isn't amazing, as you'd expect, at around 19.5 milliseconds, which is about the point where even I, a filthy casual, start to notice blurriness in fast-paced games. Just like the color gamut, the response time is actually a little worse compared to the panel used in last year's GF6 III. You'd think as time goes on, tech gets better, not worse, but here we are. There's also no Mux Switch, Advanced Optimus, or G-Sync. Those nicer features just cost more money and aren't available at this price point. The total system latency is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire appears on the screen in CSGO. Despite the objectively worse screen this year, it's actually faster compared to the older GF6 III, which is due to the newer RTX 4050 graphics, as all 40 series laptops I've reviewed this year have been ahead of their 30 series counterparts. Backlight bleed wasn't bad at all other screen issues considered, but this will vary between panels. Alright, let's see how well the lower powered RTX 4050 graphics perform in games, and how they compare against other laptops. Cyberpunk 2077 was tested the same on all laptops, and I've got the GF6 III shown by the red highlight. At 1080p, it was basically matching the RTX 3060 in the thinner but far more expensive Alienware X14, despite that using more power, as the 4050 is more power efficient, though higher powered 3060s were ahead. Even at just 45 watts, it's ahead of an RTX 2060 at 110 watts from the generation before that. Red Dead Redemption 2 was tested with the game's benchmark, and again the 4050 in the GF6 III was close to the 3060 in the X14. Not bad considering the big gap in price difference. It's even ahead of the RTX 3070 in ASUS's TUF F15, as that one was heavily limited by its quad-core processor. Control is quite GPU heavy, even at 1080p, and the 4050 was closer to the 2060 now, but with more dips in performance, as shown by its worse 1% low. Otherwise, it was ahead of all 3050 Ti results, but beaten by all 3060 results this time. Granted, all my 3060 results are also using more power too. Here are the 3D Mark results for those that find them useful. Now for some content creator tests. Adobe Premiere was tested with the Puget Systems benchmark tool, and the cheaper GF6 III was ahead of last year's Legion 5 with better CPU and higher powered 3060, as this test seems to favor Intel-based laptops. Adobe Photoshop generally likes single-threaded performance, and although the i5 12450H was better in this regard compared to last year's i5 11400H, older laptops with that processor were ahead, though only by a small amount. GPU power usually matters more in DaVinci Resolve, but unlike the games, the 4050 was now beaten by higher powered 3050 and 3050 Ti laptops. It's basically scoring the same as a similar powered 3050 Ti here, so not as impressive as the games. Blender is entirely dependent on the GPU, and like the games, the GF6 III was behind most of the higher powered 3060 3060s. We've also tested SpecView Perf, which tests out various professional 3D workloads. Despite this being a lower-end gaming laptop, MSI are still giving us full access to their advanced BIOS after you enter this keyboard shortcut. There's a crazy amount of stuff you can customize through here, from thermal and power limits, memory speeds, and way more. So make sure you know what you're doing and don't brick the machine. Linux support was tested with an Ubuntu 22.10 live CD. By default, the keyboard, touchpad, camera, speakers, Ethernet, and Wi-Fi all worked fine. All keyboard shortcuts to adjust screen brightness, key brightness, and volume also worked too. So a good result. Let's discuss pricing and availability next. This will of course change over time, so refer to the link below the video for current prices and sales. And speaking of sales, check out my gaminglaptop.deals website to get the best deal on your next gaming laptop. We update it daily to include the latest deals. When Nvidia first announced RTX 4050 gaming laptops at CES in January, they said they'd start from $1,000 US. So given MSI's GF63 is an entry-level design, it makes sense to see it for this price on Amazon. Though for some reason, it's $100 more on Newegg. The problem is, Acer's Nitro 5 is available for the same $1,000 price with a better CPU that has 4 more E-cores and a GPU power limit that's more than twice as high, so better performance. Not only that, but the Nitro 5 chassis is just better in my opinion. With both of those laptops at $1,000 US, I just can't picture any scenario where I'd ever recommend the GF63. Now, to be fair, I have not tested the 2023 Nitro 5 yet. I'm just basing this from my experience with last year's model, but I will have it soon, so make sure that you're subscribed for the review. As for the GF63, it's just too expensive for what you're getting. Last year, $1,000 could get you a full-powered RTX 3060 laptop with a good sale, like a Lenovo Legion 5 or Acer Helios 300, both of which have a much nicer build quality, a better screen, bigger batteries, the list goes on. As we saw in games, a high-powered 3060 is going to perform better, at least until we take frame generation into account, which is only possible with RTX 40 laptops. Look, I think frame generation is a nice feature in supported games, but when the trade-off is a GF63 chassis compared to a more premium option that's better in most aspects, I don't think that it's worth paying the RTX 4050 tax. I'll save all the frame generation comparisons between this laptop and the 3050 version of the GF63 last year for an upcoming video. Again, make sure you're subscribed. There are some small improvements with this year's GF63, like the extra heat pipe for cooling, 5-watt higher GPU power limit, better CPU performance thanks to 12th gen, and better GPU performance thanks to RTX 40, which I assume is also the reason that we get DisplayPort on Type-C now. The screen looks okay, and you can get by gaming on it, is what I would say if this was a $600 laptop, which is what MSI's GF63s usually are. But yeah, basically to summarize, it just costs too much for what you get. If you are on a tighter budget, then a GF63 might make more sense with GTX 1650 or RTX 3050 graphics. Check out this video next to find out all of the differences between those two laptops. With the GTX 1650 being about half the price compared to this one, well, again, as I said, it's not really worth paying the RTX 4050 tax. So I'll see you in that one next.